my name is Hallie and welcome to the Royalty. And today, I'm happy to be saying we're going to be playing Mycorrhiza. And it starts kind of ominously. Before you get into the game, there are a few things that you might want to know. Or not. It's your choice. One thing that should be noted is that you can play through the upcoming doors in any order. You don't need to play them left to right. Some audio events in this game make use of stereo effects, thus it's best to enjoy this game with headphones. The rest should be pretty self-explanatory. Don't disappoint her. Who's her? Welcome to a world of distorted minds. I will be reading through the entire story as I want to experience this with you all. My eyes were burning. It felt like hot coals were lying on my eyelids. I slowly opened them and attempted to heave myself up from the cold asphalt. But I failed. My whole body was heavy and my head felt like it was being squashed by a hydraulic press. After a few attempts, I finally succeeded and tried to make out where I was. The fog in my mind lifted slowly and I realized that I was in a dark alleyway. My vision was still blurry and I had trouble keeping my eyes open. But I could tell that I'd never seen this place before. Slowly, my heart began to race. Was I abducted? Mugged? What happened to me? I hastily checked my body, fortunately finding no wounds. Why was I feeling this weak then? Maybe I was drugged. As I tried to recall what might have happened to me, my eyes finally focused. I could see a house in front of me. It was the only house on the street with its lights on. The dirty yellow glow shone through almost every single visible window. I felt some relief, knowing that the tenants were awake. Perhaps they could tell me where I was. I approached the front door. It took me some searching to find the doorbell through the overgrown ivy. A deep gong rang out from within the house when I pressed it. The sound, amplified by the cold wind cutting through my shirt, made me tense up. What an odd choice for a doorbell sound, I thought, while rubbing my upper arms to warm myself. I waited. No one answered. My mind twisted in confusion. Why was no one coming? I rang the doorbell again. Then I tried knocking. No response. No one was coming. I didn't understand. Did they forget to turn off the lights and go on vacation? As a last resort, I tried turning the doorknob and it actually opened. This worried me. Did something happen to the family living here? Perhaps I should find a phone and call the police. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the street. My heart started to pound as my body tensed up. I wanted to dash into the house, but my feet refused to move. What was that sound? Was someone out here? Pictures of otherworldly monsters and armed kidnappers popped into my mind as my eyes scanned the darkness. The world was silent once more. I was still on edge, but my body slowly started to relax as I regained my composure. I decided I still didn't want to find out what that was. Cautiously, I stepped through the threshold and firmly closed the door behind me. I entered a dimly lit hallway. The contours of minimalistic furniture were illuminated by the streetlights outside. I felt an immediate lurch of guilt as if I was trespassing into a stranger's home. Hello? Is anyone here? No answer. The house was eerily quiet. I cautiously ventured further down the front hall and stopped in front of the other doors. A dim, Yellow light seeped silently through the bottom crack. I turned the knob. Locked. The next one, also locked. They all seemed to be. I frowned. Why were the lights behind these locked doors lit? Gave me an uneasy feeling. The door at the very end of the hall was the only one I hadn't tried yet. I grasped its handle and turned it slowly. It swung open to complete darkness. Once again, my body tensed up while my mind started to conjure horrific images. A beast with dislocated limbs and crooked teeth creeping towards me from the darkness. A floor littered with corpses and walls stained with blood. A giant spider sitting in a corner waiting for its chance to strike. My hands shook as I reached to flick on the light. It was an utterly ordinary bedroom. My heartbeat slowly calmed down as I realized that I seemed to be safe. I felt almost silly getting scared of nothing. A quick search yielded nothing but barren, dusty shelves. The bed was the only meaningful object present. Slowly but surely a wave of fatigue washed over me. With my adrenaline rush fading away, I found that I was more exhausted than I had realized. Like a worm wiggling its way into an apple, a single thought slowly invaded my mind. I had to sleep. Trying to fight it. Trying to fight it made it worse, as if some outside power was affecting me. Sleeping in a stranger's bed, in a stranger's home, was the last thing I wanted to do right now. But it was soon the only thing I could think about as my consciousness faded. I had to sleep. The world turned dark and the soft covers of the bed pulled me deeper and deeper into the black abyss. Not good. These seem like people I want to be involved with. I'm actually really excited to read these stories. I love visual novels, and it's nice to bring something different to this channel. It's still horror, still indie, but more of something, I guess, that I'm passionate about, but that I don't often publicize. So I'm really happy to be getting into a visual novel today with you all. And I hope that I read it effectively, and I hope you feel the story as much as hopefully I do. So it should. So which doors should we pick? So I am going to be basic, and I am going to start with the left door. Let's begin. Cat. There's a cat. Pets. I don't know if I'm ready for this one. I shot awake, panting heavily, my clothes sticking to my skin due to all the sweat. My eyes darted around the room, but everything was quiet. I seemed to be safe. A nightmare. Seems like I just had a nightmare. I couldn't remember it anymore, but it must have been horrifying. Chills were still running down my spine. It was just a dream, just a nightmare, nothing more. After calming down, I decided to take another look around the house. The fact that no one was here, even though the lights were on, was still nagging at the back of my mind. But I was more confident that I'd be able to find help now, that it was daytime. I left the bedroom to retry the doors just in case. They were still locked. I just wanted to go home and take a shower. I smelled my clothes, and they indeed had started to smell slightly sour. The place seemed to have nothing left to offer. Better be off out into the streets now that it was daytime. If I wasn't missing my wallet, then I'd be getting something to eat as well. I was starving. I left the house for the bright sunlight. The back street didn't seem so bad anymore. I found it to be rather cozy and quaint. I made my way down the path until I heard a faint sound of conversation in the distance. A weight lifted from my heart when I first glimpsed people walking around in a pedestrian area. There weren't many of them. As I looked around, I got the feeling that this was a rather small town. Trees and flowers were planted at regular intervals, which gave it more of a rural atmosphere. It didn't matter. I could finally ask for help. "Excuse me, could you tell me where I am?" The woman blinked at my approach. She frowned and scowled in my general direction. "This is Kajimi Heath." She looked uncomfortable talking to me, so I thanked her and let her be. Kajimi Heath. Never heard of a town with that name. Where? How did I end up here? The thought of being somewhere I didn't recognize scared me. How was I supposed to get back home if I didn't have the slightest idea where to go? I took a deep breath to calm myself down. My next best bet would be to ask someone to allow me to make a call from their mobile phone. I approached an older man in a business suit. "Excuse me, may I use your phone? I'm a bit lost and I would like to call a friend of mine so he can pick me up." His lips curled into a grimacing frown. Sorry, I'm in a bit of a hurry." I approached person after person, but I had no luck. No one wanted to lend an unkempt, half-dressed stranger their phone. As I made my way through the side street, I overheard two elderly women. I heard of some violent incidents recently. Most got away with just a flesh wound, saying they were attacked by someone or something. I heard that too. I wonder if it has anything to do with the pet disappearances. I heard of another cat that hadn't come back in several days. I was so focused on the conversation I almost ran into a girl. I mumbled an apology until I realized she'd approached me on purpose. Hi. Hi. You need to call someone, right?" She extended her hand and offered me her phone. "How did you know?" "I've seen you asking people for one." She nervously shuffled her feet and glanced away. "Thank you. I won't take long." I took her phone. It was a red flip phone with a small panda hanging from a strap. The top bar read, "May's phone." Her background was set to a picture of herself in the pedestrian area. The place in the picture looked oddly familiar, but I was likely just imagining it. I brushed that thought aside and dialed a friend's number. But the call didn't go through. I tried it again, but the result was the same. Maybe the phone was turned off? I tried my parents' house phone, then my job's front desk, and then my boss's personal cell. Each time the call failed. I was sure I had the right numbers. Maybe the phone had a bad connection. It seems like the calls won't connect for some reason. Hey, maybe you'll have more luck trying a landline. My phone does act up sometimes. You might be right. Still, thank you. I didn't want to hold her up any longer, so I gave her the phone back. To a rushed farewell, I wandered off. I wanted to quickly look for another way to get into contact with someone I knew. It occurred to me I should have asked her for directions to the police station. I turned to look for her, but she'd already vanished. As I made my way through the town, I could definitely feel the tension in the air. She was right. Everyone was on edge. Whilst I was passing by an alleyway, something caught my eye. They were too big to be rats. I couldn't really make out anything other than their eerie, glowing eyes. Maybe it was a cat gang searching for food. Proper food. I was starving. But I couldn't possibly ask random people to feed me. And since my wallet was missing, I didn't have any money on me to buy something. Though, there were oddly tempting plants growing nearby. Buds fixed on thick stems were sticking out of the ground. Each plant was surrounded by a number of small mushrooms. As I stared at them, I felt a pull. The strange appearance hypnotized me, and without noticing, my feet inched closer and closer and closer. I couldn't really think while hungry, and who knew how long it had been since I had eaten. So it probably either this or starving. I dug in. It didn't even taste that bad. Kind of grassy, but edible. Although it grew harder and harder to chew with every bite. Something red dripped out of the ground. I soon realised there was a liquid coming out of my mouth. I couldn't tell if it was blood or the plant's juices. More started to pour out as I panicked and tried to figure out what was going on. While feeling around my mouth, I realised it had become totally numb. Suddenly, a fleshy chunk fell into the red pool that had started to form before my feet. Was that my tongue? My vision became blurry and my stiff body hit the cold ground. It was dark when I awoke. I could make out that I was still lying next to the plants, but it seemed like no one had bothered to help me. I tried to get up, but I couldn't. My whole body was paralysed. I felt a sudden sting travelling from my head to my feet, and the pain grew by the second. Something was happening to me. My hand was being bent into an impossible position. Not just my hand, my whole body. It was warping, but it seemed like it couldn't handle the transformation. My body writhed and snapped in two. So I'm not going to eat the plant? I broke away from the hypnotic pull of the plants. What was I thinking? It didn't matter how hungry I was, they may be poisonous. But my hunger was beginning to gnaw at my insides. My vision grew blurry. Who knows how long it had been since I had last eaten? Suddenly I collapsed and the world around me vanished. It was dark when I awoke. It seemed like no one had bothered to help me. I tried to get up, but I couldn't. My whole body was paralysed from hunger. Something was shuffling by my ear. I felt the sniffing of an animal, perhaps one of those cats I saw earlier. Couldn't bring myself to look. It lost interest in me and walked past me towards the plants. I had more follow. Padded into view, I noticed something was off about them. Must have been my mind playing tricks on me. My hunger was overwhelming. Something about their bodies was wrong. They started to eat the plants. They were smacking rather loudly and made unnatural fleshy sounds. Every now and then one would pause and give off a low growl that didn't at all sound like a cat's. It was more like a slightly higher pitched bear growl. After a while the sounds diminished and I felt their presence vanish. I gathered my strength and forced myself to my feet. What had just happened? What were those creatures? The violent crimes that I'd heard about earlier popped into my mind. My hands began to shake. What would have happened if I hadn't been paralysed? If they'd noticed that I was still alive? I took a cautious look around. Most house lights were still lit. I mustn't have been out for long. Once again, my body gave off a deep growl. It was as if my stomach was eating itself. I had to get some food or else I was in danger of collapsing again. Should I ask someone living nearby for help? Should I take another look around town? Well, last time we found the plants, so I think we should ask for help. I was sure that they'd turn me away, but I was desperate. It was an emergency after all. Uncertainly, I approached the closest house and knocked. I was surprised when the door actually opened. Hi there, come on in. How nice of you to visit. Before me stood a fashionably dressed woman with a big smile on her face. She seemed welcoming, but her movements were rather stiff and almost mechanical. It was as if they'd been practiced over and over again. The hat, the scarf, the bag around her shoulder suggested she was just about to leave. She seemed to notice my confused look. Oh, the bag? Don't worry about it. I just think it suits me, so I've gotten used to wearing it around the house. It seemed impractical, but I guess she was very conscious about her appearance. Now come in. Everyone's already inside. Do we know each other? She took another thorough look at me and seemed to realise that we did in fact not know each other. Ah, you must be a new neighbour then. I'm Sabrina, come in. She disappeared before I could correct her. I hesitantly followed her inside. On my way in, I saw a pet food bowl near the entrance, with some of the strange looking plants in it. Huh? She'd been feeding those to her pet? I peeked into the living room. A man leapt to his feet as he saw me and stretched out his big hand to me. His coat suggested he was active in a scientific field, that he'd gotten here right after work. His other arm hung down limply. Hi there, it's nice to meet you. I'm Frederick. How are you doing? I reciprocated his firm handshake and he cheerfully gestured me to take a seat beside him. To my surprise, the girl who'd helped me earlier was here as well. I believe her name was May. She gave me a small wave. It's starting to feel like a festivity. We should have neighbourhood get-togethers like these more often. Alright, this is... She turned and frowned in my direction while trying to remember a name she hadn't asked me for. Scott. I'm Scott. Right, Scott. He moved in nearby recently, I think. So I thought we should invite him in as well. Certainly. It's nice to see you. No, I'm not really... Oh right, give me a second. She rushed into the kitchen and came out with steaming dishes of food. I could make out different kinds of meat, baked potatoes and more. My stomach gave off a deep growl and my mouth began to water. Any thought of honesty about my origin was gone. The other visitors started piling food onto their plates and I followed suit. As I devoured it, and life came back to my body, I let my eyes wander over the others. Everyone seemed to be tense, especially Sabrina and Frederick. Their movements were rather stiff. Every now and then they threw glances each other's way, glances that seemed to indicate mistrust. Sabrina seemed to especially be eyeing the cup that Frederick was drinking out of. Every now and then, when they noticed each other's look, they put on a fake smile. May seemed like she hadn't planned to be here in the first place. Was she dragged into it, just like I was? As I was cleaning my plate of its scraps, something important flashed into my mind. Excuse me, do you mind if I use your phone? Sabrina tisked. I'm afraid I don't have one. I never cared for those buggers. She looked over to Frederick. Maybe he can use yours. Of course. I can show you to my house once we're ready to go. I gave off a sigh of relief and thanked Frederick. He waved his hand in the air. No problem at all. Please excuse me for one moment, though. He shuffled out of the room, presumably towards the bathroom. All right, I'll make some more tea. She scooped up Frederick's cup and left me alone with May. I cleared my throat and nodded in May's direction. Thank you again for lending me a phone. I did appreciate that. You're welcome. I hope you'll have more luck with the landline. Yeah, I hope so too. And I guess that was the end of the conversation. Perhaps she felt uncomfortable speaking to a weird-smelling stranger. I'm gonna go wash my dishes. And there she went. The other two were taking quite a while. I used the opportunity to let my eyes wander around the room. The walls were dressed with paintings of all kinds, pictures of nature, as well as more abstract drawings. A framed piece of paper and a photograph that was standing on the drawer beneath it caught my eye. The former seemed to be an art degree, the latter a picture of Frederick and Sabrina when they were younger. They were standing somewhere that could be a university campus. Both had genuine smiles on their face. It seemed like their friendship went back quite a bit. Hey. Whoa. Did she sneak up behind me? I thought I had a clear view of the kitchen entrance. I think I heard some rumbling coming from downstairs. Probably a good idea to check it out in case Sabrina hurt herself. Oh well. Sabrina has been gone quiet for a while. Maybe something did happen to her. Perhaps I should take a look. What about Frederick? May's face slightly tensed up as she heard his name. Frederick is still occupied. The way she said his name sounded almost hostile, but she sounded convincingly confident either way. I felt May's eyes follow me to the basement. I squinted down the stairs. It was almost pitch black. I swallowed back my nerves and carefully crept down into the darkness. Maybe I should have called out Sabrina, but something told me not to. Was she down here? Didn't she tell us she wanted to make more tea? I managed to reach the bottom stair and peeked around the corner. There I saw her kneeling by lamplight in front of a large cage. A basket of the strange plants sat beside her. There. It's all right. Take a good sniff of the cup. We need to hurry, okay? I know that he's growing another one. I know he sent one after her parents. I'll avenge them and get rid of my biggest rival in one go. She held Frederick's cup to the bars. Something in her voice disturbed me. Whatever was going on, I wanted no part of it. I returned to the living room as quickly as I could. There you are, all ready to go? Upon hearing Frederick's loud voice, I jumped. What I had seen in the basement had made me anxious. I took a quick look around and saw May was already gone. Sure, I'm ready. Leaving already? I just made some more tea. I turned to see Sabrina standing in the living room entrance with a practiced smile. Sorry, dear. I'm just not young enough to stay out late like we used to. She put on a playful pout. Oh, you do wound me. Come by again. You know you're welcome any time. We bid our farewells and set out into the cold night. I was glad to leave. What I'd seen was still nagging on my mind. Frederick might be in danger. I had to tell him. I hesitated. How was I supposed to tell him when I myself wasn't sure what I'd seen? But I collected myself and went for it. To my surprise, he wasn't nearly as upset at Sabrina as I thought he would be. He actually seemed to be more upset at me. I think you should not have snooped around in the house of someone who invited you over. I was left perplexed. What just happened? I thought I was warning him, but instead I've been scolded like a child. His face relaxed and he gave me his usual smile. It seemed slightly pained this time. I suppose there's been no harm done. Perhaps he just didn't believe me. I couldn't blame him. I noticed more and more vacant houses as we crept through the town. Some were boarded up. Doors had been left wide open. Why are there so many empty houses here? These houses have been vacant for a while now. I was sure that I passed by here earlier, but I didn't notice any abandoned buildings back then. An uneasy feeling started to fester inside of me. Here we are. We stopped before a house that looked very much like every other house in this town. We stepped inside. I hesitated at the entrance before trailing behind him. Come on in, no need to be shy. Do you want something to drink? No thanks. Frederick hesitantly grunted and led me down the hallway. I only wanted to use the phone and get out. Everything that happened today had me on edge. What if I still couldn't reach anyone? Where would I go? I was balancing a fine line between hope and despair. The phone call would be what would topple me in either direction. All right, here you are. The phone seemed rather old-fashioned, but at least it had buttons instead of a rotary dial. I picked up the receiver and tried a number. Am I doing something wrong? There's no dial tone. Let me see. He took out the receiver from my hand and pressed a few buttons. He let out a disappointed sigh. Not again. Those damn rodents keep getting to my cables. I'll take a look at it. Feel free to make yourself at home. And in case you get thirsty. He fetched a small bottle of soda from the kitchen and gave it to me and went to the basement. It seemed like I wouldn't be able to leave quite so soon. Once I held the drink in my hand, I did start to get thirsty. I took a sip and thought about what to do next. I don't want to explore. I didn't think he would be happy with me poking around, especially considering how he felt after I told him what I saw at Sabrina's house. Not wanting to test his kindness, I waited. Alright, it's all done. I jumped. Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. No, it's fine. I went faster than I'd expected. Good thing I decided against snooping around. The phone should be working now. Feel free to give it a try. I'll give you some space. Call me when you're done. He took the bottle I'd drunk from earlier and left through the hallway. I had an odd sense of deja vu. I shook it off and started dialing some numbers. They were the same I already tried on May's mobile phone, and once again they failed to connect. How could that be? I was 100% certain that they were correct. Tried all the numbers of friends, family, and even work colleagues I could think of until finally... Yeah, yes? Hello? It's a woman's voice that I didn't recognise. I was certain that I had dialed the number of one of my colleagues. Excuse me, isn't this Tom's telephone number? I don't know who this is. Are you another scam caller? Don't call me again. She hung up. Alright, something was definitely wrong here. It may be best to talk to Frederick and see if he could help me somehow. Maybe he had a clue as to how I could get back home. I crept down the hall. He went this way, right? I began to hear some murmuring. A steady chill ran down my back. Sound was coming from the basement. The old floorboards squealed beneath my toes. I saw flickers of weak light coming from down the steps. I took them as gently as I could, as I held a hand over my mouth to quiet my breath. I reached the bottom and turned a corner. Frederick knelt before a big cage, a small lamp next to him, and held something up to the bars. He hissed to whatever was inside. Yes, yes. You have the scent now, don't you? We must take care of this one tonight. He's curious. He will find the secret much faster than the others. No, no, no. We can't have him make something like you too. It's kill or be killed in this town. My stomach dropped out from underneath me as I heard the horrible scraping from inside the cage. I took a step back, bumping into a wall. Before I could react, I had accidentally switched on the main light. A sudden flood of white blinded me for a moment. Once my eyes adjusted, the first thing I saw was it. Was that an armadillo? Frederick was screaming at me, but I could barely think about him. I couldn't look away from that creature. It was cowering inside a dirty cage that seemed to be too small for it. Features of a dog, but also I could see some elements that were distinctly human-like. Its mouth was way too big. The inside of it was filled with seemingly random set of teeth, or at least something that resembled teeth. Worst of all, though, were the enormous eyes staring right back at me. Frederick fumbled with the lock on the cage and my feet finally began to move. I ran out of the house and into the streets. All the while, one thought was frantically running through my head. I had to get out, had to get away from this demented town. With this thought clouding my mind, I hadn't realised that I'd exited town already. I was now on a big grassy plain. Breathing heavily and with fear flooding my mind, I had almost not noticed how heavy my legs had become. Soon I was struggling to stay on my feet and my vision slowly darkened from exhaustion and panic. I wanted to look back to see how close the monster was, but I was too afraid of seeing it right behind me. I gathered my courage and quickly glanced behind me, and to my surprise, the thing wasn't following me. I don't know if it had ever followed me in the first place, but it seemed like Frederick wanted to send it after me to kill me. Realizing I was safe for now, I stopped. My legs were numb and almost gave in, but I managed to keep standing. I couldn't believe what I had just seen. It couldn't have been real. Every inch of my body repulsed the idea of such a monster existing. But I had seen it with my own 2 eyes. I continued on at a slower pace this time and soon came to a small but quickly flowing river. It wasn't a good night to get my clothes wet, but it looked small enough for me to jump over with a running start. I wasn't the athletic type, but I managed to leap over the gap. Suddenly, my feet staggered. A wave of fatigue came over me. It was almost as if I'd stepped into a veil. The air had gotten heavier and my breathing became more ragged. I clutched my chest as I tried to figure out what was going on. A throbbing pain pulsed through my back. It was as if something stabbed me. My feet gave in and my vision darkened. I could feel a presence near me. The monster? Frederick? Before I could find out, my consciousness faded. So there's a couple of things that I want to go back and do in this, and a couple of different decisions I want to make because I want to show you as much of this game as possible. So I think that's what we're going to do next in this video. Okay? I hope you're ready. So the first scenario that we're going to look at is how he reacts if we do snoop. We chose not to on the first occasion, but I'm feeling kind of snoopy. So we're gonna skip ahead to the major decisions. We're not gonna eat. We're gonna ask for help. And we're gonna snoop. Check the pictures. I take a look at the pictures hanging in the hall. There weren't too many, but he seemed pretty cheerful in all of them, especially the ones with his dog. For some reason, I hadn't seen it around. Nothing else caught my eye. It was only one room over, surely he wouldn't mind. He said I should feel at home after all. The living room was minimalistic and unimpressive. The TV stood in the corner gathering dust. His bookshelf was well maintained on the other hand. I looked over his books. He seemed pretty interested in biology. I'd love to chat with his field sometime once I'd gotten out of this mess. I chose a random book without a cover. I opened it. It seemed to be a handwritten notebook. I quickly shut it to recheck the title. It seemed like I had pulled out a fancy book instead of notes on biology. Evolutionary Development, Intersections Between Botany and Zoology. Be a rather weird name for a fantasy novel. But the depictions on the pages confirmed it being fiction. Pages showed drawings of creatures I'd never seen before, accompanied by detailed graphs and diagrams. I turned the book and went back into the hall. Alright, it's all done. Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. Okay, so he didn't catch us snooping. So we end up the same way. But what happens if we check his study? I feel I left that till last because I feel like that's where he won't want us to be. So that is the next thing we're going to check. He didn't seem to have any reaction. He didn't catch us snooping, but I feel like he might in the study. Or at least we'll find something more. I do enjoy the skip feature of this game, as it really does help you explore all the options. Entering Frederick's study felt like I was crossing a line. After all, he'd invited me into his home and he was trying to help me. My curiosity overwhelmed me. I was wondering what that thing in Sabrina's basement was. Maybe I could find the answers here. Take a look at the table to see what he was working on. As I flipped over the picture frame of an open journal grabbed my attention. I decided to sneak a peek at the picture and was surprised to find a photograph of Sabrina and Frederick. They looked older than the picture I'd seen at Sabrina's place. It depicted them in the park as they were having a picnic. A canvas was set up nearby. Why was it lying around face down? Perhaps he just hadn't had the time to hang it up yet. I turned my attention to the journal. His writing was messy, but I would probably be able to decipher it with some effort. What should I do? There's a couple of options here. I'm going to start with read. Then we're going to take the book. Then we're going to leave the book alone. Deciding against taking the journal, reading was bad enough, but it was the lesser evil. I have a feeling that other people have found what the plants can be used for. They must be developing their own pets in secret. I have to keep growing my own and hope I'm faster, better than they are. Should be okay as long as I avoid leaving anything of mine at someone's home. They can only do something to me if they have my scent after all. Set the journal back down. Now I knew that he was a fancy writer. It's the only way I could explain what this was about. Especially the terrifying sketches that accompanied the text. Something straight out of horror fiction. With doubts gnawing at my mind, I made my way back to the telephone. So he didn't catch us. Okay, I wonder what will happen if we take the journal. I think if we leave it alone next, we'll probably not see any divergence from the plot. But if we take it, I think we will. Couldn't just peek at the journal of someone who had invited me into their home to help me. Decided to leave the study. Okay, so it just puts me back. Entering Frederick's study felt like I was crossing a line. After all, he'd invited me into his home and was trying to help me. Curiosity overwhelmed me. Wondering what that thing in Sabrina's basement was, maybe we could find the answers here. Take a look at the table to see what he was working on. As I flipped over, picture frame, an open journal grabbed my attention. I decided to sneak a peek at the picture and was surprised to find a photograph of Sabrina and Frederick. They looked older than the picture I'd seen at Sabrina's place. Depicted them in a park as they were having a picnic. Canvas was set up nearby. Why was it lying around, face down? Perhaps he just hadn't had the time to hang it up yet. Turned my attention to the journal. His writing was messy, but I'd probably be able to decipher it with some effort. What should I do? Normally I wouldn't steal. This couldn't be further from a normal situation. I had no idea when he'd come back and how much time I had to read it. As I picked up the book, something fell out. I was startled by the sound and froze. Slowly I picked it up and curiously took a look at it. A small key, possibly for a mailbox or a drawer. While wondering about where the key could fit, I heard approaching footsteps. My heartbeat accelerated. In a panic, I hastily put the key and the notebook into my pockets while quietly exiting the room. Alright, it's done. I jumped. Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. No, it's fine. Good thing he didn't catch me snooping around. The phone should be working now. Feel free to give it a try. I'll give you some space. Call me when you're done. Took the bottle I had drunk from earlier and left through the hallway. Odd sense of deja vu. I shook it off and started dialing some numbers. They were the same that I'd already tried on May's phone. Once again, they failed to connect. How could that be? I was 100% certain that they were correct. I tried all of the numbers of friends, family, even work colleagues I could think of, and then finally... Yes, hello? There's a woman's voice that I didn't recognise. I'm certain I dialed the number of one of my colleagues. Excuse me, isn't this Tom's telephone number? I don't know who that is. Are you another scam caller? Don't call me again. She hung up. Right, something was definitely wrong here. Might be best to talk to Frederick and see if he could help me somehow. Maybe he had a clue as to how I could get back home. Crept down the hall. He went this way, right? Began to hear some murmuring. A steady chill ran down my back. The sound was coming from the basement. The floorboards squealed beneath my toes. I saw flickers of weak light coming from down the steps. I took them as gently as I could, hand over my mouth to quiet my breath. I reached the bottom and turned a corner. Frederick knelt before a big cage, a small lamp next to him, and held something up to the bars. He hissed to whatever was inside. Yes, yes. You have the scent now, don't you? We must take care of this one tonight. He's curious. He will find the secret much faster than the others. No, no, no. Can't have him make something like you too. It's kill or be killed in this town. My stomach dropped from underneath me as I heard the horrible scraping from inside the cage. I took a step back, bumping into the wall. Before I could react, I had accidentally switched on the main light. The sudden flood of white blinded me for a moment. Once my eyes adjusted, the first thing I saw was it. Frederick was screaming at me, but I could barely think about him. I couldn't look away from that creature. It was cowering inside a dirty cage that seemed to be too small for it. It had features of a dog, but it could also see some elements that were distinctly human-like. Its mouth was way too big. The insides of it was filled with a seemingly random set of teeth, or at least something that resembled teeth. Worst of all, though, with the enormous eyes staring right back at me. Frederick fumbled with the lock of the cage, and my feet finally began to move. I ran out of the house and into the streets. All the while, the one thought frantically running through my head, I had to get out. Had to get away from this demented town. With this thought clouding my mind, I hadn't realised I'd exited the town already. I was now on a big grassy plain. Breathing heavily, and with fear flooding my mind, I'd almost not noticed how heavy my legs had become. Soon I was struggling to stay on my feet, and my vision slowly darkened from the exhaustion and panic. I wanted to look back to see how close the monster was, but I was afraid of seeing it right behind me. I gathered my courage and quickly glanced behind me, and to my surprise, the thing wasn't following me. I didn't know if it had ever followed me in the first place, but it seemed like Frederick wanted to send it after me too, to kill me. Realising I was safer now, I stopped. My legs were numb and almost gave in, but I managed to keep standing. I couldn't believe what I'd just seen. It couldn't have been real. Every inch of my body repulsed the idea of such a monster existing, but I'd seen it with my own two eyes. I needed to rest, but stopping could be risky. Oh, well, we know what happens. Should really take a quick break to make sure I wouldn't collapse along the way. So I sat down for a bit and kept lookout for the monster. To catching my breath, I suddenly remembered the journal. Maybe this would be a good time to take another peek inside. A small peek wouldn't hurt. Might find some clues as to what that thing was. I opened it to the very beginning and began to read. I've discovered the cause of the pet disappearances. No one was stealing them or killing them, they just changed. I installed a GPS on my own dog and followed it around to see what was going on. Eventually I found it eating one of those odd-looking plants. Tried to stop it, but it growled at me. Never had I seen it act that way before. There was nothing I could do but let it finish. Took one of those plants with me to study it. Not too long after, I noticed my dog had changed. It was a bit bigger and its hair was falling out in great quantities. Also started to bark at me, seemingly for no reason. I tried a bit of the plant myself, hoping to see why it was so drawn to it, but I found the taste nearly unbearable. Set the journal down. Thought I'd just heard a sound. I jerked my head around to find the source. There was nothing. It was just my imagination. Maybe it was time to keep moving. Keep reading. I woke the next day to a piercing pain in my left arm. At first I was horrified to find it was entirely bent out of shape. Something inside me suppressed my fear. I could calmly stood to fix it. First I thought about getting rid of it. The pain had already subsided. I was able to flatten it by beating it with a hammer. I'd lost all feeling in the limb by that point. What would people think if I went out with a bent arm? I began to look for my dog. First thing I found were large animal footprints, much too large for its paws. The kitchen had been torn apart and strange hair littered the whole house, and then I found it. At least something that was once my dog. I could see the resemblance, but most of its hair had fallen out and its jaw was dislocated. It began to growl as soon as it saw me. Shortly after, it jumped on me with no provocation. It was hard to keep off with just one hand, but its teeth had fallen out, making it nearly harmless. I managed to knock it out and lock it up in the basement. Now I had definitely heard something. I felt really uneasy about this, but I didn't want to stop reading. I felt so close to figuring out something crucial. Keep reading. A little more couldn't hurt. Couldn't see any sign of the monster anywhere. I should be fine. Right, where was I? I froze up. There was definitely something near me, and it was close. Way too close. I could almost feel its ragged breath on my skin. My heart was starting to race, and my chest contracted to the point that I had difficulties breathing. I slowly put the book down and take a break. Don't read. It was way too risky. I should keep moving. Hell knows what that monster would do if it found me. Continued on at a slow pace this time and it soon came to a small but quickly flowing river. It wasn't a good night to get my clothes wet. It looked small enough for me to jump over with a running start. I wasn't the athletic type, but I managed to leap over the gap. Suddenly my feet staggered. A wave of fatigue came over me as if I'd stepped into a veil. The air got heavier and my breathing became more ragged. I clutched my chest as I tried to figure out what was going on. Throbbing pain pulsed through my back. It was as if something had stabbed me. Feet gave in and my vision darkened. I could feel a presence near me. The monster? Frederick? Where I could find out, my consciousness faded. He found key 1. Okay. We found a key. I don't know what that means, but we have it. I think whatever I do, I should go back and replay as I just did in order to get the key. But for now, I want to know what happens if I only read to the second page. At least we know the steps to take. It was way too risky. I should keep moving. Hell knows what the monster would do to me if he found me. Okay. So it does seem that this happens regardless of which you pick. Continuing on just gives you less information. But let's see what happens if we never meet Frederick. No one would open the door for a dishevelled stranger. Instead of wasting my time going from house to house, I should take another look around town. Should be able to find a police station eventually. I picked a random direction and headed off. But I soon realised finding a police station proved to be more difficult than expected. The streets were completely empty, and I couldn't ask anyone for directions. And the further I went, the more abandoned the apartment buildings looked. Did I walk into a deserted part of town by accident? The street looked oddly familiar though. As I wandered through the dark alleyways, an odd feeling started to well up within me. It's as if I was being watched. I took a look around. My eyes scanned the buildings, which were barely illuminated by dim streetlights. I spotted something at the entrance of an alleyway. It looked like a small figure. Whatever it was too dark to make out. My eyes were probably just playing tricks on me. Must have been a garbage can or something, right? Tried to rationalise what I had seen and continued at a faster pace. Was I overreacting? There was one way to find out. Made a sharp turn away from the main street and abruptly stopped. Someone was really following me, then I'd be able to ambush them as soon as they entered the alleyway. I realised too late that they would have the advantage that I had a weapon with them. Someone was there. I braced myself. Right as they were about to turn into the alleyway, I jumped out, fist raised. The person gave a shriek and stumbled backwards, falling onto the floor. Just as I was about to question into why they were following me, I realised they weren't a threat. The person who had followed me was a small boy. He looked up at me, his eyes filled with fear. Why? Why were you following me? I slowly unclenched my fists. I need help from my sister. Your sister? He seemed to realise I wasn't planning to hurt him and slowly got up. Yeah, she's hurt. I was only following you to see if you were one of them. I had a ton of questions, but if his sister was in danger, then my first priority should be helping her. Alright, show me where your sister is. His face brightened and he led me back down the way I just came from. Now that he knew I wasn't trying to hurt him, he became quite talkative. I'm Lani, by the way. My sister's name is Amy. We're currently hiding from those pets in one of the abandoned houses. Have you seen one yet? They're really scary. His words flowing out like a waterfall. As he made a short pause to breathe, he quickly intersected. What pets are you talking about? What do you mean when you said I wasn't one of them? You really don't know? I don't really know how to explain it. He seemed to be deep in thought. Before he could elaborate, we'd already arrived. Amy isn't here. We were standing in front of an old abandoned house. Several of the windows were broken and one of them was partially boarded up with wooden planks. Lani stopped in the entryway. I was about to ask him what we were waiting for. He started whistling quietly. Creepy? It was a slow and somber melody that reverberated through the empty halls of the building. The atmosphere it created sent shivers down my spine. Then it was over. Lani stepped into the hallway and I followed quickly behind him. Seeing how stumped I was, he explained. It's something Amy and me agreed on. She hears someone come in, she's supposed to run away until I whistle this melody. Came up with it today. Pretty good, eh? The melody, I mean. Time was alright, I guess. But it was Amy's. We made our way inside and walked up the stairs and stopped in front of a dark room. Not far from the entrance, I could make out a shadowy figure sitting on the ground. Amy, it's me. I brought someone. Amy perked up as she heard her brother's voice. I quickly stepped inside and was about to rush to her side but jerked back. Her arms. She ate the plants. What happened? I had whispered it, but it seemed like Amy had heard me nevertheless. I ate a piece of the plants. Then my arms began to hurt. Now, she broke off. How could eating a piece of a plant have caused this? That didn't make any sense, but I had more urgent things to do at the moment. Does one of you have a telephone? We need to call an ambulance. Lanny looked at me apologetically. There's no one at the hospital. They're all either dead or they're too obsessed with the pets. No one at the hospital. And he had mentioned those pets again. What the hell was going on here? Just as I was about to ask, I heard a thumping sound from within the house. Lanny jerked around fear-stricken. Is it them? Amy's voice was weak. She was about to faint. Arms must have been causing her a lot of pain. I'll check it out. You two stay here. I tried to sound confident, but my voice shook softly. But Lanny had told me I couldn't help but feel scared. As the only adult here, I had to be the one to protect them. So I made my way back down the stairs. I heard something yell again. It sounded vaguely like a growl, one that was oddly similar to one I'd heard while laying in the alleyway. Could it be one of those pets? I reached the bottom of the stairs. I could vaguely make out some slight movement further down the hall. It was as if something was sniffing the air. I looked around to see if I could use anything as a weapon. There was indeed a wooden board lying on the ground near the window next to me. I carefully picked it up and gripped it tightly while inching carefully towards the creature. Weirdly enough, it seemed like it was ignoring me. As I was almost close enough to make out what it looked like, it perked up. I stopped. Time seemed to slow to a halt. A foul feeling slowly spread through my stomach. I lifted the board up a bit higher and readied myself to attack, and then it lunged. I closed my eyes and flailed the wooden plank in the general direction of the creature, but only hit empty air. It was over, I thought. I had missed, and now it would kill me, but nothing happened. All I heard was something scurrying up the stairs. I opened my eyes and whipped my head around to the sound of the sound. But the creature had already reached the top of the stairs, and then I heard a scream. It was Lanny. I ran upstairs, and Amy was laying in the same spot, but it seems like she'd finally fallen unconscious. Next to her was a blood trail leading to another room. Amy couldn't have been. A sound of breaking bones and fleshy smacking leaked out of the room. I knew what was happening without having to see it. I lifted my weapon without even thinking. I was just about to step closer to the room's entryway, but I stopped. There's no way I could fight whatever it was with a rotting wooden plank. I couldn't save Lammy anymore. It was too late. I needed to get out of here. No, more importantly, I needed to get Amy out of here. There had to be someone who could help us. Lanny's words echoed in my head, but he couldn't have been right. Police would do something about this, or wouldn't they? Or the military? I was about to go back towards Amy, but a wave of fatigue came over me. As if I had stepped into a veil, the air had gotten heavy and my breathing became more ragged. I clutched my chest as I tried to figure out what was going on. Throbbing pain pulsed through my back as if something had stabbed me. I tried to turn around, but I'd already become too weak. My feet gave in and my vision darkened. I could feel a presence near me. Was it the monster? Before I could find out, my consciousness faded. Alright, so we're not going to go look around because I don't want the child to die again. I don't know what happens to the child if we don't find them. But I'm kind of okay with not knowing. Let's collect the key so we're ready for the next playthrough. Okay, I guess that's it for door one. I am both excited and terrified to find out what comes next. I wonder if we'll see any of these characters again. I wonder if this is multiple worlds or a single universe. Either way, if you like this video, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, and you could always turn on the notification bell and leave a comment. I'm proud of you for getting through today, and even more proud of you for getting through tomorrow. Arrivederci, arrivederci, görüşürüz, go. Peace. See you on the next one. Bye!
I'd like to say a huge thank you to my royal patrons. My tier 3 supporter, Hansel Panda, my tier 2 patron supporter, Suki SJ, and my tier 1 patron supporter, Danny. Your support allows me to make content as regularly as I do, and I am so grateful. If you would like to join the royal patrons, there is a link down below in the description. Thank you so much for everything you do for me.